stop defending, start winning, Machiavelli's forgotten power law. What if I told you that most people fail not because they're weak, unskilled, or unlucky, but because they spend their lives defending instead of attacking? That the real tragedy of the modern world isn't oppression from above, but self-imposed paralysis. We've built a culture around defense, protecting our reputation, preserving our comfort, maintaining the status quo. But Machiavelli, yes, that Machiavelli left behind a principle so sharp, so dangerous, that most people ignore it entirely. A forgotten power law that doesn't just challenge our assumptions, it flips them. It says, stop defending, start winning. Now imagine this, you're standing in a castle surrounded by walls you've spent a lifetime building. Every wall represents a defense against embarrassment, failure, rejection, risk. It feels safe. But the truth is, you're not safe. You're trapped. Because while you've been defending your position, someone else has been moving. While you've been protecting your name, someone else has been building theirs. While you've been afraid to lose, someone else has been willing to lose, and because of that, they're winning. This is the Machiavellian paradox. The more you cling to safety, the more you guarantee defeat. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that a ruler who always tries to be virtuous will inevitably fail. Boldness, he argued, calculated, ruthless boldness is what wins power. But let's go deeper. This isn't just about politics. It's about you, your life, your power, your agency. Because the same principle applies to your relationships, your career, your art, your body, your mind. The person who always defends their current position, whether it's a job, a belief, or a fragile ego, loses the war. The one who advances, who risks, who initiates, who acts, that's the one who bends reality. Why do we defend so much? Fear. But fear disguised as virtue. We tell ourselves we're being cautious, ethical, balanced. We call it being realistic. But often it's just fear wearing a suit. Think about it. How many times have you held back from speaking your truth because you didn't want to offend? How many times have you stayed in a relationship because you didn't want to hurt someone, even though you were dying inside? How many times have you watered down your ideas so they wouldn't make people uncomfortable?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Machiavelli would say, that's not virtue. That's surrender. The world doesn't reward those who wait to be chosen, it rewards those who step forward, who declare themselves. And that's not just a political truth, it's a metaphysical one. The world bends to initiative. Reality organizes itself around the person who takes action. Think about gravity, it pulls things toward a center of mass. But human gravity, that's generated by boldness. You become a center of influence not by defending what you are, but by projecting what you could be. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Are you defending your current self out of love, or because you're afraid to become more? That's a brutal question, because most of us say we want to grow, but we spend our energy protecting our current status. We want to be seen as good, smart, nice, humble, correct. But those are not power positions. Those are defensive stances. You can't win from them. You can only maintain, and maintaining is a slow death. There's a reason Machiavelli admired Caesar Borgia, not because he was good, but because he acted. He moved. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't wait for consensus. He created events rather than reacting to them. And yes, he was feared. but he was also effective. And here's where the forgotten power law kicks in. The initiator always controls the frame. The person who moves first defines the terms. Everyone else plays catch up. And that's not just true in politics, it's true in every arena of life. In business, in relationships, even in philosophy. When you take the initiative, you force the world to respond to you. You stop being a passive object in someone else's game, and you become the subject, the one who writes the rules. That's the essence of power, not dominance, not cruelty, but agency, the ability to shape, to define, to begin. So why do we resist this? Why do we choose defense over offense? Because offense requires exposure. It requires vulnerability. When you move first, you become visible. When you lead, you can be attacked. But what Machiavelli knew, and what most of us forget, is that being visible is power. It's not weakness. People fear what they can't anticipate. When you move first, you become unpredictable. When you act boldly, you confuse the cautious. You unsettle the passive. You disrupt the defenders. And in that disruption, you gain leverage. Here's a brutal truth. The world is not waiting to reward your goodness. It's waiting for your movement. Good intentions without action are invisible. But they don't register. They don't echo. But even a flawed action, a wrong move, creates ripples. And ripples become waves, and waves can reshape the shore. So here is the forgotten power law, stripped to its core. He who defends loses. He who moves wins. That doesn't mean recklessness. It means calculated initiation. It means understanding that life is not a fortress to guard, but a battlefield to shape. Your ideas, your dreams, your values, they don't need protection. They need projection. They need forward motion. And that brings us to the deepest question of all. What are you waiting for? Approval? Where? Clarity? Certainty? Those things never come before action. They come after. The battlefield doesn't reward the best armor. It rewards the best strikes. So stop defending. Stop waiting. Stop asking for permission to matter. Start initiating. Start moving. Start winning. The fire of movement, how boldness bends reality in your favor. Let's talk about fire, not the kind you light with a match, but the kind that lives inside bold action. It's invisible until you strike. But once you do, it illuminates everything around you. And this is the secret most people never learn. The universe doesn't respond to potential. It responds to movement. Boldness is the spark that ignites dormant forces. It bends reality, not by force, but by momentum. The moment you move, things shift, people turn, doors open, fear recedes, resources appear, but only after the first step, never before it. We're taught to believe in preparation, we're in planning, in waiting for the right moment. But boldness spits in the face of all that. It replaces hesitation with initiation. It doesn't ask, am I qualified? It asks, what needs to be done? And then it does it. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. Because the truth is, most of the time, the world doesn't know what it wants until someone shows it. The bold become leaders not because they have all the answers, but because they move when others freeze. You've seen this in life. Maybe you felt it. That moment when someone speaks up in a meeting and suddenly the energy changes. That person didn't necessarily have the best idea, but they moved. And that movement shifted the entire dynamic. Or maybe it was someone who took a risk, launched the product, made the call, stepped on stage. While others hesitated, they initiated. And in doing so, they became the reference point. Everyone else adjusted to them. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said fortune is like a woman, she favors the bold. He wasn't being sexist. He was being brutally metaphorical. Fortune, opportunity, fate, breakthroughs favors those who act. Because action is rare. Boldness is rare. And in a world addicted to overthinking, the person who moves becomes a signal in the noise. They stand out. They set the tempo. They become magnetic not because of perfection, but because of motion. Here's the metaphysical truth behind this. Movement is the language of power. When you move, you declare to reality, I'm no longer a passive observer, I'm a co-creator. That declaration has consequences. It activates attention. It attracts allies. It even sparks resistance, but resistance is not the enemy. But it's proof that you're alive in the system, and that you're shifting something, that you're not defending anymore, you're winning. But let's go even deeper. Why does boldness bend reality? Because reality isn't fixed, it's fluid. It's shaped by perception, belief, narrative. And when you act boldly, you signal belief not just to others, but to yourself. You start to believe in your own agency. And belief is the engine of momentum. Once you believe you can shape reality, you do. Not because it's easy, but because you stop waiting for permission. You become your own authority. So many people live in cages built from imagined disapproval. They don't move because they fear judgment, failure, or being too much. But here's a painful truth. You're already being judged for your silence, for your inaction, for your refusal to rise. So you might as well be judged for something loud, something real, something true. Boldness doesn't mean recklessness. It means choosing movement over stagnation. It means stepping into the unknown with the understanding that clarity lies on the other side of risk. Think about that. Most people wait until they're confident to act. But confidence is a side effect of action. You don't feel ready and then go. You go, and then you feel ready. The fire comes after the match strikes. And here's the paradox. The more you move, the more the world moves with you. The more you act, the more people trust your vision, even if they don't understand it yet. Because boldness is contagious. It inspires. It challenges. It creates a gravitational pull. That's why leaders are not always the smartest or the most qualified. They're the ones who move first. So I'll ask you again, what are you defending? And what would happen if you stopped? What would happen if you stopped trying to be smart and started being clear? If you stopped waiting for alignment and became the alignment? What if the world is waiting, not for your perfection, but for your fire? You don't need a perfect plan. You need a spark. You don't need approval. You need action. And the world bends to movement. The bold don't wait for the wind, they become the wind. The illusion of safety, why playing it safe, is the riskiest move of all. We've been lied to, and the lie is comfortable. The lie is seductive. It whispers to us through institutions, parents, media, even our own inner voice. Play it safe, but stay in bounds. Follow the rules. Be careful. Don't rock the boat. And if you just do everything right, if you follow the blueprint, you'll be okay. You'll be protected. You'll be safe. But what if that's the biggest illusion of all? What if safety, the way we define it, is nothing more than a socially acceptable form of fear? Think about it. What does playing it safe actually mean? It means choosing the known over the unknown, the predictable over the uncertain, the familiar over the possible. But in doing so, we trade potential for comfort. We trade our edge for equilibrium. And here's the cruel twist. The safe path isn't actually safe. It's just invisible danger. The danger of being overlooked, of being replaceable, of waking up one day and realizing you've betrayed your own potential in exchange for approval you never truly wanted. This is where Machiavelli's forgotten power law hits you like a slap in the face. Because he understood something we've forgotten, the world doesn't reward the timid. It punishes them quietly. It doesn't destroy them, it forgets them. But ask yourself, how many people do you know who followed all the rules, stayed in line, did everything right, and still ended up frustrated, invisible, or unfulfilled? That's not a glitch in the system. That is the system. Safety is a myth, because the world is in constant motion. And when you remain still in a moving world, you're not safe, you're falling behind. The job you're protecting could disappear overnight. The relationship you're preserving out of fear might already be emotionally dead. The reputation you're defending could be irrelevant tomorrow. Everything you're clinging to in the name of safety is already decaying while you hold it. That's not safety. That's slow erosion. And yet, we cling, we defend. We stay small because boldness feels risky. But here's the real risk: regret. Not the regret of failing. Failing is a bruise. Regret is a disease. It spreads silently. It infects your identity. It shows up in the quiet moments when you wonder what your life could have been if you had just moved, if you had just spoken, if you had just tried. That's the regret of the safe path. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just empty. We've built a culture that celebrates survival, not conquest. We reward compliance, not originality. We've turned safety into a virtue, but Machiavelli would laugh at that. He'd say, "You're protecting a kingdom you never claimed. You're defending a castle you never built." Playing it safe is like sitting in a lifeboat while the ship never sinks, but you never reach the shore either. You just float. And floating over time becomes drowning in disguise. Here's the raw truth. The only real safety is in movement. The only real security is in adaptability. The only long-term protection is power, and power comes from initiative, not compliance. When you move, when you act, when you take a risk, you're not vulnerable. You're alive. You're visible. You're creating leverage. That leverage, over time, becomes your shield. Not because you're protected by rules, but because you're protected by relevance, by boldness, by the identity you forged through action. And this isn't just about careers or influence. It's about your inner world. Playing it safe, emotionally holding back your truth, suppressing your desires, staying quiet to avoid conflict, that's a prison. You can't love from safety. You can't create from safety. You can't grow from safety, because safety isn't neutral. It's regressive. It pulls you backward while convincing you you're standing still. So ask yourself a question most never dare to ask. What has safety cost me? What dreams were abandoned in its name? What parts of myself did I bury to preserve comfort? What opportunities passed me by while I was calculating the odds? And now ask a deeper one. What would it look like to stop defending safety and start building strength? Because that's the shift. That's the forgotten law. Stop defending what you have. Start building what you want. Stop insulating your current identity. Start upgrading it. Stop trying to be safe. Start trying to be strong. Because strength survives storms, safety just delays them. You weren't born to play defense. You were born to create, to shape, to stretch. And every second you spend trying not to lose is a second stolen from your power to win. In the game of kings, why power belongs to those who dare, there's a reason history remembers kings and not caretakers. It's not because kings were always right, or virtuous, or even wise. It's because they dared. They stepped into the arena when others stayed in the shadows. They were willing to risk their name, their comfort, even their lives because they understood a brutal truth. Power doesn't wait for the worthy. It obeys the daring. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you claim, and claim is a verb. We've wrapped the word power in so many layers of shame and suspicion that most people never even try to understand it. They associate it with corruption, manipulation, ego. But Machiavelli saw through that illusion. He knew that power is not inherently evil, it's neutral. It's a tool, a force, a sculptor of outcomes, and the people who shy away from it in the name of humility or decency. They don't make the world better. They just leave it to those who aren't afraid to wield it. But here's the twist. Real power isn't about domination. It's not about controlling others. It's about mastering your own motion, your own narrative, your own choices. Power is the ability to move the world with your will, but to generate effects, to matter. And that kind of power doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from daring. Daring to speak when silence is expected. Daring to act when no one else will. Daring to stand alone when the crowd demands conformity. These are not grand theatrical acts. They're micro-revolutions, and they add up. Every time you move when others freeze, every time you say what you truly think, every time you choose the harder path because it's yours, you are playing the game of kings. Not to rule others, but to rule yourself. And ruling yourself is the hardest game there is. It means choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. It means taking responsibility for your outcomes instead of blaming the world. It means demanding more from yourself than anyone else does. But that's the crown. That's the throne. Not some external symbol of status, but the internal capacity to direct your own life. But this game has a cost. You will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will lose people who preferred the version of you that stayed quiet, small, agreeable. That's the tax of daring. But what you gain in return is priceless: clarity, momentum, self-respect, and the ability to bend reality not because you control everything, but because you move everything. Most people live like pawns, waiting for permission to advance. But kings don't wait. They declare, they initiate, they seize. And here's the secret. You don't become a king by waiting to feel powerful. You become powerful by acting like one, by training your mind to ask, not what's the risk, but what's the move, by replacing hesitation with execution, by accepting that discomfort is the path, not the obstacle. So I'll leave you with this one final question, the kind that echoes when the video ends. Are you defending a life that was handed to you, or daring to build the one you were born to live? Because the moment you stop defending, the moment you dare to move, the moment you stop asking for less pain and start asking for more power, that's the moment the game changes. That's the moment you stop surviving and start winning. This is the forgotten power law. This is the fire Machiavelli tried to pass down through centuries of distortion. Stop defending. Start winning. Now, go claim your crown.